In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to write a linear inequality from a graph. I think you're going to find that this is very similar to writing a linear equation, but we know with inequalities that their graphs look a little bit different. Okay, so I've listed the steps here for you. It says to write a linear inequality from a graph. Number one, we need to determine the y-intercept of the line. Okay, it's a graph, so hopefully we can look at the graph and be able to quickly identify it. If we can't, if it's not an exact point, if it's not an integer, then we, remember, can use 2 points or use our slope or use a point in our slope to be able to correctly and exactly identify our y-intercept. We need to know the slope of the line, and I just want to remind you, this is a positive slope, this is a negative slope, so sometimes we forget to put that negative sign on our slopes. Then we need to write the inequality as if it were an equation in slope-intercept form. I am going to ask you to also write them sometimes in standard form, and we'll talk about that, but we always want to start with slope-intercept form. Now, the part that starts to become different is we need to determine the shading. We need to determine the shading. If our shading is above the line, then we put greater than. If the shading is below the line, then we put less than. And then the last thing we need to do is determine if we need to add a line under your inequality sign, which means it could be equal to. So remember, if we have a solid line, then yes, it would be greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. But if we put a dotted line, if the graph is a dotted line, then we would not put the line underneath it. Okay? Okay, so let's look at the example. I've kind of already walked you through the steps. So number one, the y-intercept, it's right here. Our y-intercept is -2. Our slope is 1/2. Remember, one way to get this is to draw a right triangle and do your rise over run. That's how I would probably quickly do the slope on this. Notice this is shaded above the line. So I would say y is greater than 1/2 x minus 2. It is a dotted line, and so there's no line underneath it. This is not greater than or equal to. And so the inequality would simply be y is greater than 1/2 x minus 2. That is in slope-intercept form. Now I want to go ahead and mention to you, how would we then, if I wanted to, or if your answer choices were in standard form, how would we change this to standard form? Okay, so I hope you're thinking, well, the first thing we would need to do is subtract 1/2 x from both sides. So that would be your first step. Okay, now you could possibly have an answer choice like that, but remember, we want our a value, number one, to not be a fraction, and number two, not be negative. So I'm going to multiply this whole inequality by -2. And so that's going to leave me with x minus 2y and 4. And remember, when we multiply an inequality by a negative or divide it by a negative, the inequality symbol has to switch around. And so that's going to be a really important step that we pay attention to. So this would be the best and the most likely way, if it was multiple choice or if you were writing it, this would be the best inequality in standard form for this graph. Okay, so let's look at some examples together. If you want to pause the video and think through them yourself for a minute, I would love for you to do that. Or you can just work along with me. Okay, so again, we need to know the slope and we need to know the y-intercept. Okay, so here is my y-intercept. My y-intercept is 1. My slope. Okay, now remember, we need to find 2 exact points. I'm a little nervous about this. Okay, I think those are 2 exact points. This is a positive slope. This is a rise of 2, a run of 3. So my slope would be 2/3. Okay, so thinking in just my equation, it would be 2/3 x plus 1. Okay, now where is the shading? The shading is down. So that's less than. It has a solid line, so we would put equal to. Okay, now let's just for fun, let's go ahead and change this into standard form and just see what it looks like in standard form. So the first thing we would need to do is subtract 2/3 x. Okay, again, we don't want a negative, we don't want a fraction, so I would multiply this by -3. So that gives me positive 2x minus 3y is greater than or equal to -3. So this would be the inequality in standard form. This would be the inequality in slope-intercept form. Okay, let's look at the next one. We need to know the slope. We need to know the y-intercept. Okay, I'm going to start with the y-intercept. 2. Remember, find 2 exact points. And notice that now our slope is negative. So 2 over 2 is 1. The slope is -1. Okay, so y, -1x or -x plus 2. Okay, let's see. This is shaded below the line again, so that's still less than. And we have a solid line, so it would be equal to. Y is less than or equal to -x plus 2. Okay, let's look at the next 2. What is your y-intercept? Your y-intercept is -1. Okay, let's pick 2 exact points. Those look like some good ones right there. A rise of 1, a run of 3, so my slope is 1/3. So y, 1/3 x minus 1. Okay, so let's look at it. Where are we shaded now? Okay, this time we're shaded above, so that's greater than. And it is a dotted line, so this time we wouldn't put equal to. Okay, I'm going to show you this one, and then I want to show you 2 more. Here's my y-intercept. My y-intercept is 0. Here are 2 points. A rise of 2, a run of 1, and it is a negative slope, so my slope would be -2. Notice I am shaded below the line, so y is less than -2x, and it is a solid line, so I would put equal to. Okay? Now the last 2 I want to show you, I just want to show you a horizontal and a vertical line. So I'm going to draw this example real quick. So let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's say that I had a graph that looks like this. Okay, so first off, we know that horizontal lines are y equals line, right? And this is going through 3, so if we were writing it as an equation, we would just say y equals 3. But this is an inequality. Now, we're shaded above the line, so that's greater than. It's dotted, so I wouldn't put equal to. So it would just be y is greater than 3. Now, sometimes vertical lines trick people a little bit. Whoops. Okay, so just kind of looking at this. Here's my vertical line. So hopefully remember vertical lines are x lines. This is going through where x is -2. Now, this is where we get tricked up. Is this less than or greater than? Well, think about it. These numbers to the left are smaller than negative 2, right? So this is x is less than, and then this is a solid line, so I would say x is less than or equal to negative 2.